Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cosmic Metamorphosis. My name is Kat. How are you all today? Oh my goodness. I think it's beginning to look like fall where we are. Um, it's only supposed to be about 66 tomorrow where we are, and then next week sometime it's supposed to be up back into the 80s, high 80s, but I'm loving it. I do. I just don't like the fact it gets dark too early. So, I just wanted to start off and say, last night I had a huge energy shift for me while I was sleeping. It literally like this wave came over me and it woke me up out of a sound sleep. Like I could just feel something like all down throughout my body. Like I could just feel it. So I was like, what the hell was that? What was that? So I don't know if any of my soul family out there has felt a shift in energy lately. Um, I haven't had a transmission in a long time. I call them transmissions. I don't like the word download because I feel like that's too AI and it's not organic. But I definitely had a voice tell me just one phrase in that in between time where you're not quite asleep and you're not awake. And it said, big things are coming. So I think we all know big things are coming or things are going to happen. But I found it kind of curious that it said big things are coming. So I don't know. I don't know what to say, think about that. But that was the transmission that I got last night. And oh my gosh, I was at work and I was looking through our local paper. Excuse me. Oh my God. I was laughing so hard. Okay, this is what came up in our local paper in the Valley. No more footsie. Trump openly embraces QAnon. Oh my God, look at this. I don't know who writes for our paper, but they are so freaking liberal. It's not even funny. It's just, it says former president making no bones about his alliance with false theories. It says after winking at QAnon for years, Donald Trump is overly embracing the baseless conspiracy theory, even as the number of frightening real world events linked to it grows. It says on Tuesday, using his Truth Social platform, the Republican former president reposted an image of himself wearing a Q lapel pin overlaid with the words, "The storm is coming." It says in QAnon lore, the storm refers to Trump's final victory when supposedly he will regain power and his opponents will be tried and potentially executed on live television. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Jeez. Yeah, it says, these are people who have elevated Trump to messiah-like status, where only he can stop this cabal. Bloom told the AP on Thursday. That's why you see so many images in online QAnon spaces of Trump as Jesus. On Truth Social, QAnon affiliated accounts hail Trump as a hero and savior and vilify President Joe Biden by comparing him to Adolf Hitler or the devil. Because he is. Oh my God. It makes me mad. I just had to laugh. It's just, oh, Jiminy. I thought I would share that with you. That's in our local paper. I'm sure I get the looks driving around because I have a sticker like this on the back of my car. And then on the very back page, if you know anything about Chrissy Teigen, it says Chrissy Teigen says her miscarriage was actually an abortion. Look at, look at. Look at it's probably backwards for you guys, but oh my God. So basically, she's saying that if she didn't kill this child, that it would have killed her instead. So basically, this demon is saying that she sacrificed her child. Okay, that was a couple of years ago. We all saw pictures online. I don't know if you guys did, but it was full baby. She gave birth to it. She said it was stillborn. Yeah, that was a sacrifice. I think we all knew it back then. So I feel that's really funny that like that's in my local paper in this tiny little town. So wow. Jeez. Okay, and I got another strike from YouTube. Um, so it's my second strike, and it was on, I don't remember what number video, but it was the one that says, "Are you seeing contrast?" I think that's the one. So yeah, I don't know what was on there that I'm not even gonna appeal it because I know what the truth is if they don't want to hear it, tough shit. Um, so I might just have to stay with BitChute, and I may just do like a lot of people and maybe do a quick little video with a link to BitChute to send my YouTube people over there to watch my videos. I would do Rumble, but there's really not a lot of whole people on Rumble. And you don't get a lot of views either. So anyway, I got my second badge of honor, you guys. So, and I don't even have that many followers. Criminy. Like I think on BitChute I have less than 500 on BitChute, and then YouTube I have less than 200. So I don't know, but they sure are getting views. It may not be a full view, but people are clicking on it at least. So anyway, and I wanted to thank a couple of donors too, John and Rob. Thank you so much. I did send you emails, so thank you for your donations. I really do appreciate that. We're going to get into Alex Collier's September 9th 165 webinar today. Let's get started, you guys. So he says, "Hi, everybody. Welcome to 165. I'm so glad you're here. We're all glad you're here. Thank you for spending your time with us." So I guess not much is happening, and he laughs. Because how many people say that? Like, oh, there's nothing going on. There's nothing happening. Nothing's going on. Right, right. You just don't have the eyes to see it, do you? He says, it's been another quiet couple weeks. And he laughs. He says, "Listen, let's get a couple of things off the top here." He says, "I have been scanning the channels." He says, "because I can't sleep." And he laughs and he says, I'm returning. I am retiring from public speaking. That means getting on a plane or getting in the car and driving to a structure and speaking to a live audience." He says, "That's what I'm doing. I'm retiring from that." He says, "I have one left, and that's in Orlando, Florida. And then I'm done with that part." He says, "I never enjoyed it anyway. The public speaking part." He says, "The webinars will continue." He says, "until they don't." Okay. He said, "So I thought I had explained that, but maybe my English is not so good. So, okay, the webinars will continue." My cat's playing down here. He says, "As you are aware, a monarch has passed away. And along with that, so we know, did you see the thing that said, basically the news said she's been on ice for 4 years? I pretty much know that. I think a lot of us knew that, but they just announced it. So, and along with that went the New World Order, went Admiralty Law. He says, "So y'all, congrats." He says, "And you are no longer lost ships at sea." Kind of sounds like the saying I say at the end of my videos, huh? "You are no longer vessels. You are now human beings again. Congratulations." It says, "Congratulations. You are no longer vessels. You're human beings again. To those specific countries such as Australia, Canada, congratulations. It says, on your soon to have independence and freedom. It says, from the monarchy. Things are really looking up. All you now have to do is get rid of your corrupt governments, and you're in a position to create your own country. It says, not what somebody else has dictated to your corrupt government officials from thousands of miles away. So we have to look forward. So you have that to look forward to, he says. Children will be safer. And he laughs and he says, I mean, I could go on, but I probably should not. He says, one of the things we talked about was disclosures. And I've seen a couple of YouTube videos. He says, and I love British humor. I always have, which is why I've always been such a fan of Monty Python and McIntyre, he says, and so many of the other great comedians back in the day. He says, growing up as a kid, he says, if you were watching television after midnight, and of course it was just black and white then, Benny Hill was on, and then he was always pretty funny. He says, but you Brits, as things begin to roll out and disclosure occurs, you're going to need your sense of humor. He said, you really are. Just like we are here in the States. We are. So right now, let's just talk about Britain. It says, wouldn't it be interesting if during the funeral of the Queen, if an entourage of white hats, both British and American military, MI5 and MI6 white hats, showed up at the funeral with Diana, which we know it didn't, but maybe they were in disguise. Who knows? How interesting would that be? And he laughs. He says, and that's where she decided to let everybody know she's still here. Wouldn't that be interesting? That would be. Says it would be very, very interesting. And then she could sit down and have a talk with Harry and definitely with William and Kate and say, you don't want this, especially William. He says he doesn't need this. He really doesn't. So wouldn't that be interesting? Just food for thought. You never know, right? I said, you never know. But that would make quite a splash. And he laughs. He says, as far as bloodlines, a lot of disclosure will be about the bloodlines. Ancient history, we'll get to it another time. He says, distractions of fear already. He says, we were talking about FFs, or you know what I mean, flags, in 17 cities here in the U.S. And he laughs and he says, some knucklehead is saying everybody in New York City should evacuate. And I think LA is on that list. Houston, he says, also, it would just never happen. He said, but this is all these knuckleheads know, is this fear. He says, we have naturally begun entering into a new reality, and that also means we are leaving the old world behind. He says, now there are some things about the old world that should be remembered and deeply reflected on. But there's a great deal about the old world which we've experienced but never really seen. It says that we should clearly leave behind. And that is the idea that we were disempowered, that there were things that we could never accomplish, that there's a great deal of lack in the world, and that we weren't deserving. All of those belief systems clearly need to leave in the past as we continue to move forward. Like I said earlier, Admiralty law is going away. It's done. Oh my gosh, if you hear my cats are play fighting, so hey, calm down. Okay. They're high on catnip. The 3 Vatican trusts that we talked about in earlier webinars, and some of you maybe already know and researched, those have ended as well. They're done. So it's a whole new reality, folks. As you're aware, the Catholic Church, the Vatican, has been calling in all its markers, excuse me, all its assets, all of its bonds, all of its notes. He says yada, yada, yada. It says between now and September 30th. It says, and you want to look at the idea that the reason the Vatican is doing this is most of that wealth was stolen in the first place, and they have to give it back. They have to return it. So it'll be interesting to see if they can pull all that together and then see how they redistribute all of that stolen wealth. And they've asked that it all be turned into the Vatican Bank. So, for those of you who have to know and understand that the Vatican was a business, it was a business first, it was a corporation second, it was a trust before anything else. But it was business, and it was run like a business, it was managed like a business, and it controlled others like a corporation. Keep that in mind as the disclosures begin to come, okay? Because you cannot separate the monarchies in Europe from the Vatican. It says you cannot. So it's going to be very, very interesting. It says this is going to be a great time. Okay, I think I have to put cats out. Excuse me. Come here. This is Salem. Say hi, babies. Hello. I'm a troublemaker. Come here. Causing trouble. Okay. So, where was I? Okay, so he says, this is going to be a great time. This is going to be a time of great reflection and contemplation. It says, as these disclosures begin to roll out now, and they can start at any time. He says, well, actually, some of them have already begun, but the real heavy-duty stuff is coming now. Real heavy-duty stuff. It says, Plato once said, one of the penalties for participating in politics or talk about it is that you end up being governed by your inferiors or idiots. It says that is clearly on display, as we can see all over the world. It's clearly on display. So, ladies and gentlemen, if we want a different type of a world, if we want to evolve, if we want to continue to raise our frequencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are the ones that have to change how we think. We can't expect government to do anything. In fact, it should only be delegated to doing what we want it to do and nothing else. It should not be making any decisions for we the people whatsoever. Says, so that's something we're going to have to work on and we're going to have to change is our relationship with government. And that means we have to change our perspective. The same will be for the monetary systems. Same will be for education, for healing modalities, for spiritual nourishment and growth. We're the ones that have to change the way we think. How we got into trouble is how we abdicated our individual sovereignty and common sense to a bunch of idiots. And this is where we've ended up. It says, you know, on the brink of these idiots literally reducing humanity by 90% or more. So we can never go to this place again, ever. Because the things we do today set up everything for the future, especially the children. And let's not forget the biggest reasons for doing this is because of the kids. There's a higher shift, global shift is because of the children. Let's not forget that. So we need to stay focused. We're going to have an interesting time. It's going to be an interesting ride. A lot of peaks and some valleys. He says, but the valleys could be rough in the sense that they're not going to be quick. It could be several weeks, maybe a month or two of valleys, but the peaks will more than compensate for that because it's important. He says, I don't know how many of you had the opportunity. He says you can go online and says RSBC, which is Right Side Broadcasting, or OAN, he says on YouTube, and watch Trump's last speech or rally in Pennsylvania. He said some very, very interesting and remarkable things. A lot of the speech was the same thing. He says, and a lot of the same topics. But one of the things he said that was really, really interesting is that he said that weirdo, Mark Zuckerberg, and he laughs, says, I'm probably going to get us kicked off Facebook for this. Says, but Trump said that weirdo Mark Zuckerberg called him and wanted to come to the White House to see him. And this happened, well, he gave this speech, he said, on the 31st. And he said this happened a week ago, that he wanted to come to the White House and see Trump and bring his wife. And Trump said, fine, why don't you come? And Trump made a point of letting everybody know that he showed up to kiss his ass. That Mark Zuckerberg, I'm just going to say, came to kiss his ass and told him that he's #1 on trending on Facebook. Says, like the president would even give a shit. He laughs. Says, but what's really interesting is that he said this happened a week ago. So this happened in August, that Zucky went to the White House to have dinner with Trump. Trump wasn't in D.C. Trump was at Mar-a-Lago. Says Trump was at Mar-a-Lago. So y'all need to pay attention to things that are being said. And what's interesting is that the media didn't go after him. They didn't go after him. They didn't say he's crazy, he's nuts, he's delusional. They didn't say a word about this at all. Okay? Yeah, that doesn't tell you something, huh? So yeah, start listening to those rallies. Start watching them. A lot of codes. He says, because we're watching a movie. We are watching a movie. And we're coming to the end of the movie, folks. And Alex laughs and he says, it's going to be amazing. It's truly going to be amazing. He says, I'm going to cover some things in a minute. I want to get to some of the news here. He said some things that are also really important. For those of you who are Americans, I want to take you back to 2009. Obama had just then been inaugurated, and they wanted to kickstart the economy and create jobs. Make a splash. And what they did is they put together a $790 billion. This is all relevant to today, stimulus bill. It says, I believe it's still the largest ever. And he put his VP, Joe Biden, FJB, I'll just call him, in charge of this money. Now, some of the documents that were taken from Mar-a-Lago were documents tracing the money, where some of the money went. Okay? It says now the VP, who's now President FJB, was in charge of this money. He was tasked with oversight. So is it a wonder that hundreds of billions of dollars of this stimulus bill cannot be traced once it went to the Ukraine? Once it hit the Ukraine, it went into a black hole. They can't trace the money. Isn't that interesting? He says. This was in 2009. Okay. What's also interesting is that this money went to predominantly Democratic strongholds, and some cities got tens of millions, some of them got hundreds of millions of dollars, and they spent less than $1 million in some cases. Of the 100+ million were gone. He says, so where's the rest of the money? Where's the rest of the money? Because the American people are still paying that off. So these are some of the things that you have to look forward to. He says, in Europe, he says, y'all are going to have an interesting winter. You really are. In Europe, the energy markets, which are all in shambles at this point. He says, what's really interesting is that margin calls are being made on all these energy companies. And what I mean by that is they want, the owners of the bonds want a guarantee that they will get paid. So your energy companies are now having to go to your governments and get ridiculous lines of credit. Now, this money cannot be used to pay for your oil or to do any infrastructure. It can't be used for any of that. That money has to be put aside in an account doing nothing to guarantee that those that hold the paper on the bonds, your energy on the bonds, your energy sold them are protected. I don't know if that makes sense. As you know, I can't read my writing sometimes. As of this morning, that number was up to 1.5 trillion euro. Now, what's really interesting about the timing of all this is that the entire fiat currency system is in collapse. It's coming apart at the seams. But see, this in all stuff we need to know, because it's all stuff we need to know, because most don't know how any of this stuff works. But that's what's going on, okay? We're about a week and a half away, yeah, from October. It's coming. That crash is coming. Be prepared. It says these are margin calls going on as we speak. It says as these disclosures begin to roll out, and they're going to be on a very specific sequence of events and knowledge based. And the reason for this is they want everyone to see the false reality that was created to entrap humanity here. You know, I'm not sure exactly how they're going to do this, but the way that it's going to be rolled out is that you're going to be able to see after each presentation how the belief systems that we've held about what we think the way things are was literally like creating a movie set. It says they convinced us that what we were seeing was real, when in fact most of it wasn't. And it will become plainly obvious to many of us as they begin to show us what is real and what wasn't. A lot of this will involve, excuse me, history, because we shape and look at ourselves today, what we used to anchor our vision of what we are today is the past, and they reinforce that by teaching us false history. It just reinforces the way we look at ourselves today, which of course grounds us deeper into the physicality and the belief systems, how they've had some issues as of that because people are waking up. They're beginning to understand and realize that nothing is as it appears. It says for one. And two, that they are seeing things in a very different way, in a clarity that they have never seen or experienced before. And they are beginning to perceive and understand that their density is not the limit. That technically, at least on a spiritual level, there is no limits. And the more information that comes out about the quantum system, about quantum particles, about dimensions or planes of existence, the more that comes out, the more that conversation becomes normal around all of us. What happens is that we take the existence, the reality of those planes of existence and dimensions, and we are literally pulling it down to us because we're consciously talking about it. We're consciously thinking about it. So we're attracting it to us. And the more we attract to us, the more we actually engage with it and begin to use it ourselves. It says now we all know this. It's just that we forgot. It says we forgot what it was like because when you come from a higher dimension and you fall into time, into third density, it's almost as if you're falling into a bowl of jello. It says, you're like, holy shit, I can't move. And everything becomes about survival because of the density of the physicality. And once they have you in survival, all they have to do is reinforce the survival. So the idea of survival, just reinforce it. So just keep reinforcing them, the idea of survival, and we get stuck. So we get stuck. It says, and that's what's been done to us, to many, many generations of us. It says, you will be glad to know that this is ending, that it is definitely ending now. It says, but we have to be aware of the process. We have to be aware of all the decisions we made around this idea and how we abdicated our individual sovereignty and our own critical thinking and common sense to buy into the script. And he said that twice, to buy into a script. It says, so when the term we're watching a movie, he says there are more layers to that than you realize, okay? He says every single one of us has a quantum field around us. Some people call it an auric field. Some people call it an energy field, a light force, whatever you want to call it. The reality is it's a quantum field. Every single one of us has it. When you accept that idea, when you integrate that idea that you yourself are quantum, you have the ability with intent to literally create your own future, to literally create your own reality, to call forth out of somewhere materialism. You have this ability. You have the ability to move DNA from one plane of existence to another. It's already been done. He said you have the ability to reach into multiple dimensions of reality with the structures that already exist in your brain. We're already there. And I don't know how many of you, I know years ago when Obama was still in office and there was an article about him wanting to do a study on the human brain. And when I read that, I was like, oh my God, they want to know how to manipulate us more. They want to know everything about our brains because this is a way to why they've been interbreeding with us too, because those of us from higher dimensions, they can't reach. They've been in these lower dimensions, this thickness, and they want to be in these higher dimensions. And as Alex, I think, has said before, they wanted to basically piggyback on us by breeding with us, that possibly they would be able to shift into other dimensions eventually by breeding with us. So I just thought about that when he said that, is that you have the ability to reach into multiple dimensions of reality with the structures that already exist in your brain. He says we're already there. We're only now beginning to find out what those are and what they look like, whether it's 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. He says, okay, they're there for a reason, okay? And they're not the same for everybody, which is why there's certain people they wanted to breed with. But they're there, he says, for a reason, because that's part of your quantum field. As you evolve, as you remember, you are going to begin to pull experiences to you, opportunities to you, and people that are on the same frequency level as yourself. Says a majority of these may be a soul group that you've been a part of for eternity. He says, people you like to hang out with play different roles in different lifetimes. He says, yes, reincarnation is a fact. He says, where you take turns. He says, whatever. But you also, now you're going to pull in different frequencies and other personalities that are at the same level of your quantum field, that are not on Earth or not from Earth. It says, but they're in the neighborhood. Because now using discernment is always a good thing, always a good thing. And I would always encourage discernment. Okay. It says the information in the disclosure of the things that are coming are designed to give you a knowledge base, an information base, so that you can begin to let go of this false reality and move into a true reality of who and what you are. It says this is, of course, as Art Bell used to refer to, will quicken your quantum fields. And as your quantum field begins to vibrate higher, as it begins to expand, as it begins to integrate more information, not just from here, but from the universe itself, you will begin to process of evolving less and less dense, and you will have more and more light. Your physical form is going to begin the ascension process, not just your consciousness. It's going to be an exciting time. It says it's going to be an exciting time, folks. Yes, it is. And I think when he was talking about that, the physicality of us changing too, like I've read that too in many books, and maybe that's why I've been losing all this weight. Like I hit a plateau, but I walk so much at work. Like I do 30 to 40,000 steps every shift. And if I'm working 4 days a week, like that's a lot of steps. So no wonder, like I haven't seen my legs this thin since I was probably 18. So I just feel like, oh my God, I'm too skinny. I'm too skinny now. What's the deal? Like, but I guess it's a good thing. I just feel like, oh my God, I hope I'm not sick. I don't think I am. I feel fine. I feel great. I just have my days like everyone else where I feel like energy is sucked from me. But yeah, I think I just do a hell of a lot of walking at work. So all the weight that I had gained the 2.5 years I was off of work, like came off like really quickly. Oh goodness. So it says, I have a very dear friend that lives in Yelm, Washington. That's Yelm, Washington. Susan, he says, and she sent me a book about soulmates, and it took me a while to get to it. He says, so in a conversation with Mornay, I asked about soulmates and twin flames, and he looked perplexed. He says, and I'm trying to explain myself. He says, where two souls separate themselves, and he wasn't on board with that. He says, he was not on board with that at all. Where two souls separated themselves and became two separate beings and went in different directions, and at some point would meet and reunite. He says he wasn't on board with that at all. He says, okay. He says, in their belief system, and this is their perspective, what we would maybe perceive as soulmates would be members of our soul group. He says the concept of a twin flame in his or their perspective would be us and source. That would be the twin flame relationship, us and source. The soulmate would be those members in our soul group that we have known for eternity. And we are so comfortable with each other that sometimes you would not know yourself apart. It says this is the A perspective. Okay. So that's come up a lot over the years. And it makes sense. Like, I don't know. I don't think I've ever believed really in a soulmate or a twin flame. Like I've always this makes sense to me. I always said when I was little that my soulmate or my true love was like not on this planet. I told my friends, I was like, they're not here. I decided to come here and they were like, no, I'm not going. I'm not going down there. You can go down there. I'll wait for you though. So they're somewhere out there. um says we're going to be getting some assistance on multidimensional attacks because we're moving into, or some of us are already into fourth density consciously. Says, which is why now you're going to see your physical bodies begin to adjust. As the physical bodies adjust, you will become lighter. Your physicality will begin to change. Some of you are already there. Others are just now beginning that process. It's going to be in stages, all right? Everybody's going to be at a different level so that we can all support each other and those around us that begin to see the shift or changes. We will be at different places so we can relate to everybody that so chooses to do this. It says we're going to get some help with that and with the attacks. And if you keep a positive attitude, if you continue to ground your body in nature, in meditation, and you hold that frequency of what it is that you want in a space of contentment, love, and gratitude, you shouldn't have an issue. It says, but if you're going to move into a place of depression, of giving up, of being angry and frustrated because this this isn't happening on your timeline. He says, then you're gonna have issues. He says, then you're gonna be opening up your field to these assholes that we need to move past. He says, I'm just making you aware of this. Consciously, many of us are aware of the shifts, but now we're physically going to start to see them. And it's going to be like, what just happened? When did that show up? It says, what is that second sun always in the sky now? Hopefully you've all seen a lot of those pictures. It says these kinds of things we're going to see and experience. And our scientists are not going to be able to say anything about it because they haven't a clue themselves. And they've not invested in themselves spiritually. They've invested their life and their focus and their consciousness in science, the science of physicality, all the while forgetting that they themselves are a spiritual being as well. So they're not going to have answers. And I remember reading, and if you look up and do any research on the photon belt, and I've talked about this in other videos, like all this stuff's happening at the same time. We're coming into the photon belt, into this plasma energy field where things are going to change and things are going to be lighter. You're going to be seeing things that you've never seen before, or things, supposedly animals you thought were extinct. Things you're gonna be seeing, things that you didn't think existed. Okay. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Like I said, I've seen more. The insects are very different this year. There's yeah, the insects definitely. Like I said, I've heard cicadas. I heard it one day and I didn't hear it any other days, and they're gone now. But yeah, the insects are kind of very different. There's tons of butterflies now around where we live, just things we haven't seen before. So yeah, keep your eyes open. I see a lot of shadows as I drive home at night. Like I'll see shadows running across the roads and stuff. So just be aware. We will be seeing things. He says that's why if you look at the medical industry, they completely bypass nature. He says they would borrow from nature something that worked. If it had an ingredient that they thought they could use, then they would borrow from nature, but then they would tweak it. They would tweak it, not realizing that the reason nature heals is because we are all part of the same quantum field. They just ignored energy. We said that twice. They just ignored energy. So to set aside to create pharmaceuticals, they would alter the frequency of your physical body. And when your body didn't know what to do with it, it would cause side effects. Not to mention that half the chemicals in there, the body's like, well, what the hell is this? It doesn't know what to do with it. That's all going away, okay? That's all going away because that is not part of the reality. The reality we're moving back into, not the fake reality that was created for us. Okay. Because I got this the other day and I thought this would be a good thing to talk about. And he laughs. He says, I have a neighbor down the street. I've said hello to him for several years. He says, I didn't really care for him. He says, but his dog was nice though. And then I overheard him talking, he says, at the dog park. And I was like, wow, he's woke up. He's woke up. He says, and I heard him talking to a woman. And he goes, yeah, I'm awake now, but I don't know what to do. I can't talk to anybody. He goes, I try talking to my family because I care about them and what's going on and what I'm seeing. And he said, they just think I need to go back on my meds. Oh my gosh. He says, because now he's finally seeing the darkness and he's seeing the deception and he understands that there are other forces at work here now and he's beginning to see the shift. He's experiencing it himself. And for all of you who are here, maybe for the first time or maybe the second time, or for all of us who will see this at some point in the future, and you're in this place to where you're now beginning to see everything that's happening and you understand that your light has been turned on and there's no turning it off now. It says when you're around people who are not awake, you can expect to get resistance. You can expect to get repelled by friends, family, coworkers who are not awake. They're just not gonna hear it because they are extremely comfortable being asleep. Whether they know it or not, they're extremely comfortable in the place that they're at. How to turn up my sound. Oh my gosh. Okay. It says some of the people in your circle, long-term friends that you've had since childhood, as your frequency continues to change and you begin to see more and more, those people will leave your life unless they're on the same trajectory as you. I had several friends growing up, and I found a few on Facebook, but um, some of them stay in. There's one that stays in touch with my brothers on Facebook, which I think is kind of weird. But like I never talk to them anymore. There's no one from my schooling like that I talk to anymore. There's pretty much no one really, even like in my past jobs that I've talked to anymore. I'm pretty much alone. I think I decided to take the hard road and just was like, screw it. I don't care if I have anyone around. Like, there's one really great lady that moved here from Germany, and I met her through our spiritual center, and she's into this letter 17 too, just like me. So I love her. She's great, and we need to get together more. I just find it really hard when I'm working 30 plus hours a week and then trying to like manage my home life and work, and I find it really hard sometimes to get out and go to lunch with a friend or what, but I need to. Like I really need to. So, um it says they may circle back at some point in the future, but for now, you just have to love them from a distance and let them go. You know your intentions to want to share is, of course, loving and caring because you're a compassionate being. And we all go through this phase with people. But in the very beginning, it says sometimes we come on a little bit strong. He says very uh, overwhelming. He says, or maybe too urgent. And they're just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What are you even talking about? He says, I haven't got time for this. But that's because your intention is one of loving and caring. He says, you want them to know what's happening. But if they're not ready, you have to let them go. Because you're going to go through anger, you're going to go through shame, you're going to go through grief and fear. You may even go through a short phase of depression or disappointment, frustration. And those are all phases that we go through. All of us go through it. He says, but it changes. It changes very, very quickly into forgiveness, clarity, peace, gratitude, self love, and when you hit that truly love phase with yourself and all around you, that's the when the oneness comes. That's when the oneness comes and you are fully connected. And it's at that point where you are fully connected to your twin flame, source. Said source. And all things are possible with source. It's okay to be where you are. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. None of us are broken. Most of us are just confused because we don't understand. We can't see the forest from the trees just yet. But it will come, and you will trust that it will come. But you can't be hard on yourself because we're all here sharing the same experience with you. It says now, the markers, the events of the outside world, because what I've been talking about is the inner world, the outside world. The markers are all designed at this point to show you the difference between a fake reality and a genuine reality. And when he said that, it reminded me of George Cavassalis, and he explains in our Journey Home book the difference between the organic, okay, matrix we live in and the inorganic. So Alex talks about that too, the fake reality and a genuine reality. And as we are marched down exposing the fake reality, we will be making jumps into what real reality is and what it can be. And each one of you are going to be asked to participate in the creation of the genuine reality, an authentic reality, one that is not just enclosed here on earth, but one where we are all connected to not only earth, but to everything going on around us off world. There are many, many spiritual groups that unfortunately have been anchored in the matrix that was created by the Orion AI system, which has completely run amok, or did run amok. There are some pockets of it still running, okay? But the Alliance and other groups, they're all over this. It says they are, in fact, all over this. But they have to act responsibly as well in how they undo all of this. Because many of the souls stuck and anchored in the matrix are people, are souls they know, their loved ones, the ones they've been on other journeys with, that came here to make a shift that got stuck. So they're not going to do something stupid to hurt anyone. It's important to be aware of this. So a lot of us who volunteered to come back here and help this, we have families out there that have come back to help rescue us, to help us. Okay. For me, that's very comforting. That's very comforting to know that I have family out there watching over me and trying to help us. Okay. I love that he says that. They're like, I gotta go in. I gotta get them. They're my family. I can't let them suffer. So it's important to know that. He says, now they're not gods. He says they are not supposed to be worshipped. And if they ask you to worship them, just move away. Just move away. And they will be dealt with at some point. Okay? He says they're not here to do that. They're here to assist us in our spiritual jump into another frequency or domain of knowing. That's what they're here to do because it benefits everybody to make this happen. They're not being self-serving. And for those of you who are stuck in a religious dogma, you have a massive, rude awakening coming to you. And I do not envy it. It says, I do not envy it. But you have a massive, rude awakening coming. It says, when all that falls apart, you're going to feel completely stripped naked and totally betrayed. And you would be right on both accounts. And he kind of laughs and he says, because that's exactly what it's going to feel like. And that's exactly what it is when all that false dogma just collapses around you and you know that it was a lie. And you standing there naked, guess what? That's who you are. When he said that, I got the vision of the part of Game of Thrones where Cersei was naked and having to walk through the streets. And they cut all her hair off and they were all screaming shame. The behind her was saying shame, shame, shame. That vision popped into my head when he said that. He says that will probably be the first time since you've been born that you will be that clean energetically. He says it's truly a moment of empowerment, and it should be, and hopefully will be seen as just that. It says it's like putting you through the dishwasher. You're clean now. You're totally clean. There's nothing attached to you except which you choose to carry with you. And you better be sure, you better be clear that it's something that does serve your involvement. If it does not, let it go. Let it go. We cannot hold on to things that no longer work, and that would be guilt, that would be fear, that would be shame, that would be anger. These things do not serve us. They were constructs to trap us into a physical form. He says it's time to let that go. And we're all experiencing that at different degrees and variable of ways. He says it's going to be really interesting, okay? For those of you who are awake, stop waiting for the shift. He says, be the shift. Just go be it, okay? Just go after it. That's what I'm doing. He says, just go after the shift. I have a very clear picture in my mind about what I want. So I'm making that shift now. You have to do that for yourself, okay? He says, we're not waiting for anybody. We don't need to. We don't need to. We've already been up there. We know what it's like. We just have to remember it, but we know it's there. We know what we're searching for. Just get out your flashlight, he says, and start heading in that direction. That's the problem, I think, with my life. Like I said, I think so much ahead in the future and what I want this world to look like that I get depressed when I have to go to work sometimes because I have to come out of that reality back into this one, into this lower one. But when I'm at work, I smile. I'm on a cash register a lot of the times. I help people. I greet them. I say, have a nice day. I smile. I have a lot of people I just see, I light up their face and they smile back and they say nice, kind things. And I just think, okay, I feel great. Like I feel great today. And when you communicate in a positive way with people, it makes you feel good inside and it actually gives you energy. It actually does. So we get a lot of older people and I love them because I just think someday I'm going to be there and I hope people like treat me well, like that. But yeah, some of them will tease you, you know, and it's just great to see. So anyway, he says, I would like some of you to please do some research on John Quincy St. Clair. Um, he worked for the Hyperspace Institute. John Quincy St. Clair. He was also known as John Q. And we will come back to that in a future webinar. So that's your homework. He says, a time of great transition. I think he was reading this from something. I don't know if he wrote this. He didn't say. He just basically started reading this. So he says, a time of great transition. What resonates in your body, soul, and spirit. Embrace. Make your own course corrections. You don't need approval from anybody. You don't. But you can make your own course corrections. Do not disempower yourself. If you hit a roadblock, it's because you need to let some shit go. Let it go. Find out what it is and let it go. It'll be your own shit. It won't be someone else's. All right? And even if it was an action or something that someone did recently or in the past, let it go. Just let it go. If you let it go, then they can let it go. Let it go, but you're on your own journey. If it isn't serving you, let it go. Let it go. Okay. Experiences are great teachers in your life. If you learn from it, don't put it into your heart, your body, or your mind. Okay. Just focus on self-empowering yourself. The best and greatest thing that you can do is choose yourself. It says that twice, to choose yourself. Not anything in the past, but to choose yourself now. You can't help anyone unless you're helped. What's that saying? You can't love anyone else unless you love yourself. So true. It's very true. And there's a lot of people, I am telling, there are a lot of people, it's very sad, that are mean. And you know what? It's because they don't love themselves. They hate themselves. And they probably don't even know why, because they don't pay attention. But then they make everybody else's life like miserable around them because they don't love themselves. So he says, I have all these notes. He says, and it's interesting how sometimes these things just take their own direction. He says, number 165 of these webinars, he was saying, and I still feel like I'm still figuring it out. How to do these things. Okay, and then he gets into some questions. First question says, JP says something. He says, we've already spoken about Her Majesty. I guess he was talking about Her Majesty, unless you've got anything else to say. Alex says, the reason a lot of things are gonna move is because she held so much power or negative energy, and that's just a fact. What she represented was extremely negative. And those of you who see it in a different way than I do or others, it may take a while for you to understand that the disclosures will share that are going to be shared with you. You should come to that conclusion as well. Okay. So next question. I've heard that the white hats have an antidote for anyone that took the shot. Should I say jabs, whatever. Have you been provided this information as well by the A's? The answer, he says, it's my understanding that this is in fact true, and they are going to be doing their best to roll that stuff out as soon as it's possible. He says what surrounds those decisions and what decisions have to be made in order to begin that process of timing of delivery. He says, I do not know. He says, but there is a way to fix it. I do not know if it can fix every single person. Some people who've had 3 or 4 of these, that would mean they have multiple mRNA booster shots. I'm not aware if there's a cutoff date, if they're alive, and if they get the treatment, will it reverse it? He says, I don't know any of that. I certainly, like everyone else, would hope so. Because the way this went down, how it went down, and the sinister intent behind it. He says, I mean, you have to ask yourself, are these in fact human beings that did this to us? I don't think so. He says it's hard for me to grasp that human beings could actually make this decision to do this to other human beings. But yes, I did hear they have a way to fix this. Next question is about pineal gland. Could you please elaborate on the original intent on this incredible gland in our brain and body structure? And do all races in the universe, both oxygen and hydrogen breathers, have one? And what is the A's relation to it? And Alex says, oh my God. He says, that's a webinar in itself. He says, I do not know if all races have a pineal gland. I do not know that. He says, I don't know if that's something strictly related to humanoid types. I simply don't know. He says, regarding its purpose, I myself am still learning about that. I do not have all the answers. I just don't. He says, it's obviously important to our physicality. It's obviously extremely powerful because putting fluoride in the water was done to specifically target the pineal gland, to shut it down, to calcify it. So obviously it's important, and obviously we need to all know more about it. Next question is about time travel. You have often said many of us are souls that have traveled back from our future to right a terrible wrong. Please elaborate how this could be possible, especially if now there's only one timeline. Is history changeable after the fact? And Alex laughs and he says, yes. He says, yes, it is. He says, see, the matrix we've been living in, we see time only as linear. The rest of the universe doesn't see it as linear. Like I said, I think that was the hardest part for me waking up, was realizing that the past, present, future are all at the same time. And it's hard for our brains to wrap around the fact that, like, okay, me existing as a child or as an older version of me is existing somewhere in this quantum field. It just blows your mind, or in another parallel reality or another dimension, or it's really hard to wrap your brain around that, right? Like he says, and for those of us just coming out of the matrix or still stuck in the matrix, we cannot possibly conceive what that means or what that even looks like. We just can't. It says, but the rest of the universe is not linear. Past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously. The more we learn about quantum, the more educated we will be in order to form a constructive visual of what that looks like and an understanding of how it all works. At the moment, we don't hear because we're just coming out of our coma. It says so. It's also important to note that some of us came in on alternate timelines, specifically to be merged into this one. And the reason that decision was made is because to come in on this timeline, the one we're on, they would have been taken out. It says they would have been removed. They never would have survived. It says so. They came in on alternate timelines. It says now, obviously, I'm talking about highly evolved beings, so that their merging into this one timeline would be seamless and that they can merge into this timeline virtually unseen. Virtually unseen. He says, boots on the ground. Okay? Boots on the ground. And I'm leaving it there. So think about that. Question. I live close to Geneva in Switzerland, and last Friday we had the largest thunderstorms I'd ever seen and heard in my life. Isn't that interesting? And I just talked about in my other video about the weird thunderstorms we were getting, like every night for like a week. It's the weirdest thing. It says it went on all night until the daylight on Saturday morning. My inner feelings tell me there was something happening over the lake. Excuse me. We all know what is under the lake. Are you aware of anything? Thank you. And Alex says it was probably a battle of some sort. And I would bet money that that's exactly what it was. Someone trying to open up a portal, someone shutting down a portal, someone trying to open a portal and escape, others shutting down the portal and saying, you're not going anywhere. It reminds me of, hopefully a lot of you have seen, like there's that old painting from what, the 1600s above a town. I think it was Germany, it was somewhere in Europe, and there were colored orbs in the sky, and the people in the village saw that, and they were fighting with each other in the sky. So that kind of reminded me of the battle going on. It says all those things come into play. That would be one of the last strongholds for whomever has been left here and hasn't been arrested or removed. He says that would be probably one of the last strongholds. He says the other stronghold would be, unfortunately, in Australia, because you guys are still going through a shitstorm there. He says, and the only reason your politicians are still acting like that is because they still think they have some backup. The joke is on them. But nonetheless, he says, okay, I just wanted to add something really quick before we get to the next question. A few days ago, FJB, the fake president, signed an executive order ending addendums to Executive Order 13838 and 13848 that Donald Trump signed into law when he came in as president. And that would have to do with the confiscation of all assets, money, and things that were involved in crimes against humanity. Yes. FJB added addendums to that executive order. So for those of you who are Americans, all that's left at this point is for someone to come on TV and say, you know what? Trump is still the president. That's all that's left, okay? That's all that's left. So how much more of this show are they going to put on? And the reason I'm not clear about, but it's really pretty obvious. Really, like anything you see nowadays is it's right in your face. If you can't, like, I have people be like, well, so and so did this, and this is what's happening. And I'm like, oh my God, seriously, you are still so asleep you can't even see it. Like you're just, it's all about the fear, 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 fear. And I just want to go, oh my God, okay. If you can't see the movie playing out before your eyes, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's literally so ridiculous. So ridiculous. Like, it's not possible. So, I don't know. Next question. Wano Saban said that Prince William's DNA is connected to all the 13 families. What are your thoughts on this? And Alex says, well, I heard that just a couple of days ago too, and I don't know any more than he said. He says, like I said, I just learned of this, but he says, William can pull a Harry and just say, no, I don't want any part of this, and I'm hoping that's what he actually does. He says, he seems like a really good kid, and I just hope he really thinks for himself and becomes his own man, and he thinks for himself and says, I don't need this. I don't need this shit. He says, I have a wonderful wife, and he said two great kids, but I think, doesn't he have three? I think they have three now. I don't follow that. Maybe he'll have more. He says, I don't, I don't need this shit, and I'm hoping that's exactly what he does. He doesn't need to step into the role of the Antichrist to fulfill some bullshit dark agenda. He says he doesn't need to do it. It's a dead end anyway, says, and this is how he wants to be remembered in future prosperity. He says, no, he's got kids. He doesn't want them to think anything other than he's a great dad and a good man. That's what he wants. So technically, the vicar of Christ, the Pope is the Antichrist, says that's what it means, the other Christ. So it's just more stupidity. Let's see, next question. Three-letter agencies among these operating. Can you please specify those which have been taken over by the White Hats for sure? And what will be the conditions for the other agencies to be taken down? Alex says, I don't have any information specifically about that. There's at least a dozen that need to go away. He says, we are going from a corporate government to a constitutional republic. He says they're completely different beasts, different animals. If we move everything to a local level, which is where it was designed and meant to be, keeping it in the hands of the people, then we don't need the oh my God, I can't talk today. Bureaucracy. We don't need it all. We don't need it at all. But again, ladies and gentlemen, this is such a good question. This government, these governments we have, they were supposed to service the people. They were supposed to be there to assist the people, to protect the people, to protect their rights, to protect the borders of their country, not to become the masters, not to become the masters. To make sure that doesn't happen again, that's on us. It says that's on we the people to make sure we have a government that protects and is of service to us. We don't become its slaves. He says, no, 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 no. If you empower yourself, you empower your children. If you educate yourself on how things work, if you educate the children on how all things work, this doesn't happen again. You put the structure in place so it doesn't happen again. We just got to make sure it happens. He says we have to call the shots, okay? There is no, well, that's not possible. That's all bullshit. He says anything is possible. Anything is possible, okay? He says your twin flame is source. Your soul is attached to other multiple dimensions of enormous potential and knowledge and wisdom. and a depth of love and compassion and knowledge we couldn't even begin to comprehend here on earth. Someone tells you it's not possible, it's bullshit. Said all things are possible. Just got to figure out a way. You just got to figure out a way to make it happen. Next question. I'm wondering why the royals are called blue bloods. I'm guessing it's because they were and are reptilians. Here in Australia, there are reptiles that excrete green fluids. Any thoughts on that? Thank you. Alex's answer was, well, the blue blood portion of it, he says the blood in all of our veins is blue until it hits the open air. Then it becomes red. He says that's number one. Number two, they're referred to as blue bloods because of their DNA structure. They needed more copper in their physical form and more copper in their blood. But all of us are technically blue bloods, okay? It's just when your blood hits the air, it becomes red. Next question. Now that the Queen's passing is official, how quickly may things accelerate and what can we expect in your opinion? And he says, well, there's a rumor they're going to crash the economy, the global economy, this weekend and institute between now and the 15th the quantum financial system, which we know didn't happen. As far as we know, it didn't happen in the public, right? We didn't know. He says, and I preface it that as a rumor. So he's not saying this date for as a fact. He says it's been a rumor. And we don't know for sure until it happens. But that movement, he says, is there completely bankrupts all the monarchies, all the corrupt banking systems. It literally takes it all down. And they will have all that funny money and nowhere to spend it. He says, so we'll have to see. Now, if they do in fact pull this off and they begin to process here this weekend or the next week of the bringing online of the QFS and blockchain, if that happens, it does not mean the RV, okay? Let's be clear about that. It doesn't mean the RV is happening yet. This is a process. We haven't been here before. We're all just going to have to be patient. We're all going to have to figure it out. But each one of us is going to be put online into the quantum system. The system already knows who's good and who's not, who's on the naughty list and who isn't, okay? So there shouldn't be an issue. And as the transition moves forward, we will continue to use, here in the United States at least, the Federal Reserve note as we transition to crypto into a new asset-backed hard currency. He says, but it's a process. It isn't going to happen overnight. There's been a lot going on behind the scenes, guys, more than we can imagine, and it's been going on for years and years and years. It's truly remarkable, and when it's all said and done, the accolades and gratitudes we all owe all the warriors and warrioresses, he says, I'm not sure that's a word, that were part of this transition. Many are going to be the most unsung heroes in history of our planet. He says, but they have the less. Oh, but nonetheless. See, I can't read my writing. Oh my God. But nonetheless, deserve our blessings, our gratitude, and our prayers for the selfless acts of courage, bravery, and time that they gave all of humanity to set this structure in place so humanity could go forward into the future, leaving the darkness behind. Next question. Years back, you talked about the A's being in awe about how we hold our reality together with our intent. Could you talk more about this? I talked to a scientist about this, and he said that was too deep for him to go into. And Alex laughs and he says, yeah, I bet he did. says, well, when you go to these universities and you want a job using your degree, you have to think like they do, or at least pretend to think like they do, so that you can work at university and or work at a lab, he says, or wherever you get your paycheck and you get your tenure and then your retirement. And as long as you play the game, you focus on that. Again, when you're talking about intent, you're talking about the spirituality and the soul of the being. Says he probably couldn't go there because it would fuck up his head and his perspective and view of reality, which means he would not be able to continue moving forward doing the job he was hired to do. He says, now, I don't say this lightly. I've had these conversations. He says, in fact, back in the 90s, I had a long correspondence with David Bowie. Oh my God, I just got a deja vu. How weird. And we would write and then email about a lot of questions about that. And he was a very, very well-educated man, and had circles where he moved in and would talk about spirit and soul reincarnation. And he himself told me about some difficult conversations he had with people he had known a long time who simply would not break mold from the culture they were in and teaching it to go there, to go to the spiritual side, they simply wouldn't do it. They couldn't do it. And he told me about a conversation he had with a friend of his at Cambridge who told him straight away, he goes, David, if I go down that road, I cannot do the things that I need to do here in Cambridge, and I would lose everything. So I know that's not an isolated event. He says it's not. Okay, next question. Elena asks, Elena Denham, Dear Alex, may I suggest this topic? The true royalty of the people of Earth versus political royalty of some family. I believe we should redirect energy and focus away from the death of the queen of a small territory on Earth with our own true royalty, which is of intergalactic level. Would you feel inspired to comment on that, please? And Alex says, well, that's one of the first things I talked about 30 plus years ago. And that was information that the Ace felt extremely committed to sharing with us, is the fact that genetically we were all royalty already. And maybe that's something I should revisit in the next webinar. Maybe we really don't understand. It says, and appreciate the importance of that information and truly what it means to be a physical royalty. For example, William, and this came up earlier today, they say the blood of 13 families in him. The last piece was the Marigovian. Oh my God, I can't talk. Marigovian, which was said to be the bloodline of Christ, which he got from his mother, Diana, Lady Diana. He says, we, whether it's 22 or now 24, we represent races, not just a family, but races, entire races of beings. He says that's a significant difference because when you represent races, you represent a complete culture and its history. Going back to the very beginning, you also represent what it becomes in the future. It's a big responsibility, huh? Right? Are you ready? He says, God bless. I love you. Thank you for participating in our little webinar. You guys are spectacular. Also, we had great questions. They get better every week. And to all of you, well, you're just awesome. Simply just awesome. and we all appreciate you. So, from the bottom of my heart, take care, and I guess we'll see you next week. So there were several other questions, but it were ones that were, like I said, either already answered from other webinars or things like that. I didn't think were that important. New things, basically. I look for new information. So hopefully you all enjoyed that. Thank you to all my subscribers. I love all of you. You are my soul family. Give you all hugs. It's getting good, guys, right? It's getting good, and I'm so excited. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this, share, hit the like button. And like I said, I think I'm going to post this last one on YouTube, and we'll see if I get any more strikes. If I get one more strike, they're going to pull me from YouTube. So yeah, I might have to do separate little introduction videos with a link to BitChute. So thank you so much for watching, all my supporters. I love all of you. Hopefully you have a good rest of the week. I will start transcribing the next webinar, and I hope all of you have a wonderful day, and just keep being the lighthouse, shining your light outward, so that those lost ships at sea can find their way home. And so say we all. Hey, I love all of you. Thank you so much. See you next week. Bye.